Okay. Well, thank you everyone for joining. Welcome to our March presentation with our very own Tiana Cooksey. For those of you who don't know her, she is a superstar. We're very proud to still be able to call her Wisconoma. As apparently there was a mistake in her registration and she's still registered as a Wisconoma member and not a New York chapter member. So another year with Tiana, yay, happy for that. So a little bit about Tiana. I'll share the biography that she sent over. Tiana is a sustainable design and equitable urban development specialist committed to transforming underutilized spaces into resilient, community-driven environments. She's the founder of Mecca Development and creator of Regalia. And she uses those two platforms to leverage adaptive reuse, climate conscious design, and urban strategy to develop innovative solutions for housing, infrastructure, and public spaces. With dual master's degrees in architecture and urban planning from Columbia University, Tiana integrates design thinking, data-driven urbanism, and stakeholder collaboration to shape cities that balance financial returns with community priorities. Her work bridges the gap between architectural innovation, environmental justice, and community resilience, ensuring that future developments are sustainable, inclusive, and regenerative. I'll also say that well, first of all, I'm Taruna Gupta. I am the president of the Wisconsin chapter of NOMA. Sorry, I forgot to introduce myself. Um, I've known Tiana since she was a student at University of Wisconsin-Milwaukee. I think you were the NOMA student chapter president when I first met you. You did an externship where I worked, and then later you did that internship. Tiana's been always very driven, and she's very savvy with new technologies, and she's done presentations for women in design and NOMA in the last few years on a variety of topics, including redlining, um, women in the profession, and more recently for her new venture, Regalia. So very excited to have you here, Tiana. Thank you for agreeing to present for us, and the stage is all yours.
Thank you, Taruna. I would love to just say thank you to you and West Conoma because you guys taught me so much and allowed me to kind of test out my business acumen before I started my business. So I'm going to get started with the presentation. So the way that this is going to work is that I'm going to talk about my company a little bit and then introduce Regalia, which is the tech platform that I'm going to be presenting about. And so then I'll go through a case study. So the case study that I'll be showing you is the Rheingold Redevelopment Project in Brooklyn. So it's located in Bushwick. And so I'll be talking about what I did to analyze that case study, but how it relates to the methodologies embedded within Regalia. And then the interactive demo session is mostly going to be a conversation. I do have a little something for y'all, but the interface is still very much in development. So then I do want to have conversations. The point of this is really for me to get the product out into the world and get as much feedback from stakeholders as possible before I start to actually pay for in-depth product development. And so this session is tailored to architects. So I'll try to focus more on design strategies, but the entire development platform is for neighborhood planning. And so at Mecca Development, it's a relatively new development firm. And essentially it caters to three pillars: sustainable urbanism and adaptive reuse, community-centered development and spatial justice, and then urban strategy and research-based design. All of these things work hand in hand together. And if you check out my website here in the QR code, you can see a little bit more about how those three pillars kind of are separated and how I do my work. And so what I'll be talking to you all about today is Regalia. So the point of this platform is to essentially balance out financial returns with social responsibility by using technology, real estate expertise, community insights, and all of these things to kind of understand how to address critical gaps, especially in affordable housing. And so the reason why I was interested in creating something that would do these things was because a lot of my work is around housing accessibility. And so this was from a snippet of a project that I did based in Culebra, Puerto Rico. And it was really about climate resiliency, but my focus was really on how to develop a community land trust so that the residents would be able to leverage as much power as possible through the policies that existed, but also understanding the financial kind of power dynamics of that area. And so this platform over the years has started to think about affordable housing shortages, how we could leverage vacant and underutilized properties, and how essentially we can bridge the gap between different stakeholder groups, because a lot of times values are different, but outcomes are suffering because of a lack of effective communication. So thinking about how to integrate climate resilient strategies into everything we do, and reallocating funds in a smart way using technology. And so essentially Regalia is providing strategic insights on what to develop, where to do it, and how to do it. And so this is essentially for people working in the built environment, but more specifically for real estate developers, community development corporations, and government entities. So essentially the digital investment platform is data-driven, and it helps to make decisions based on real world data, but it also equips stakeholders with that data, so financial, climate, and policy. But then it also aligns market demands with community needs, and I'll talk a little bit more about how that works. And so the focus of Regalia, at least the first initial launch, is adaptive reuse, just because for sustainability purposes, we want to find ways to reuse some of the things that are already existing instead of just kind of throwing them away. So how can you kind of think about embodied carbon? How can you think about the cost differentials between redevelopment versus new construction? And then how can you think about preserving cultural and historic assets? And so now I'm going to get into the case study. So Rheingold Redevelopment in Bushwick, Brooklyn. This development will be looking from 1980 to 2020. So it was a long development process, and I'll specifically be focusing on Rise Girl's contribution. Rise Girl is a community development corporation based in Brooklyn, and essentially what they were able to do was take a site in Bushwick, Brooklyn when it was vacant for about 20 years and access $22 million of capital to build affordable housing for its residents to attract people into the neighborhood. And so the way that they did that was they split it up so that there were condos, there were townhouses, there were apartment units that were affordable. It was a mix of different housing types, which allowed them to kind of access multiple funds of money, multiple streams of revenue. So the caveat of that is that once they did the brownfield remediation, a lot of private developers came into the area and started to develop. So now you have a situation where the cost of living there is a lot higher. So the people who were able to access that initial housing were able to generate wealth, but that is not the case anymore. So Regalia is really looking at how do you kind of deal with the market changes in a way that is sustainable. And so some of the challenges that I'll be talking about is basically transforming an old site that had contamination into a mixed-use residential site. Thinking about zoning and regulations, thinking about affordability versus market pressures, and thinking about infrastructure, specifically green infrastructure, but also limitations to sustainability. I'm gonna take a sip of water because my mouth is dry.
Do what you need to do.
Thank you. Okay, so this is the methodology that I utilized to analyze this case study. So I won't go in depth about every single thing, but I will give an overview. I did a program analysis with the company Rise Bureau to see what their strategic report said, to see who their partners were, to see what their goals were and how they were executing those goals, and also how they were benchmarking those goals. So then I looked at the stakeholder mapping in a variety of ways. So taking all of the plans that I just mentioned and thinking about what do their partners do, what value do they add, and how can we rearrange the way that we work together to create better or more efficient outcomes moving forward. So the ethnographic analysis was me essentially going to the site and studying it, understanding kind of how people utilize the different spaces and the different types of buildings, but then doing a series of interviews, which I'll talk a little bit about. And then the site analysis utilized geographic information systems. So I'll showcase that a little bit more in depth for this demo, as well as the economic analysis. But what I essentially came out with through this was understanding a way to think about the value chain, which is looking at the entire development process and each phase of the development process, thinking about ways that you can make it more efficient. So here's an overview of all of the stakeholders involved, and this is kind of given a high level view of the developers, the governmental entities, the community development corporations, and then just the residents. So this allowed me to understand in the development process who were playing what roles and what type of leverage that each stakeholder have. And so I essentially started to create these frameworks to help think about the redevelopment process that was already taking place with the Rheingold development. So thinking about the stakeholders and how they were partnering together, how they were working together based on their values and capacities, and then some of the challenges that they encountered, but then thinking about strategic solutions for how they could have mitigated those challenges by either partnering with more people or tailoring their asks to different investors differently. And so this is kind of what I came up with. This is like a snippet of a larger database that I created for this, but it helped inform the updated design scenarios. And so I will quickly talk about some of the people I interviewed throughout this process. I talked to a lot of amazing people from different backgrounds that gave a lot of very holistic insights about how to go about thinking about adaptive reuse and historic, all of these precedents that have already happened that can inform new case studies. So Michael Bale, one of my favorite people, he was really big on housing analysis, and he informed the economic analysis that I did. Richard Brown is the director of housing at Impact Brooklyn. He was really big on financing scenarios, thinking about the limitations to affordable housing development because of the term sheets that exist. And so in some of these proposals that I created, it was really about whether or not the term sheets are effective or preventative when it comes to sustainable development practices. So Batu Diety was an affordable housing and value chain consultant. She really talked to me about how to think about stakeholder mapping to maximize everybody's role in the development process. So I will talk about that a lot more. Adam Freed is the principal of Bloomberg Associates. He really works at the head of the climate adaptation department. And he talked to me a lot about in the development process, you have to think about who the client is, who's actually paying for the work to be done, and how to balance out what they want with what's actually needed based on the data that you see. And then Milo Hudson, he was a professor at Columbia, but now he is the dean at UVA. But he talked to me about basically funding allocations and how to create opportunities that may not exist based on how you attach certain funds to certain programs within the development process. And then I will talk about Pavel Madre was my advisor for this particular project, and he gave me a lot more insights about specific strategies Rise Girl used and how those have been able to allow them to be one of the most successful affordable housing developers in New York. So I will quickly go through James, who talked to me about basically how do you create a tool that will allow you to take data, filter it out, and create scenarios that may not exist very quickly. And so environmental justice is at the root of everything I do. So Dr. Arijit Sen, really talked to me about how to go about the community insights. So there's data that exists online, but there's also humanistic data that you have to incorporate somehow. So thinking about what the methodology is for that. And then of course, talking to David, who was a tenant at one of the luxury apartments that got built. Okay, so getting into the site analysis, I took all of those interviews and took some of the strategies that they kind of talked about in terms of understanding term sheets and in terms of understanding how sites are organized, how to analyze the history of a site to inform the trajectory of the site. And I came up with this strategy to really understand how things were developing in Brooklyn from 1980 to 2020. So what this revealed is that a lot of times there wasn't a lot of development until there was. So there was a big boom that you can see in different data. I had to change up the way that I was mapping because it didn't really reveal too much, which is another thing that I'm going to be discussing for Regalia. So because the maps weren't really doing me enough justice, I utilized parametric modeling to take the GIS data into Grasshopper, and it enabled me to basically see from 10-year intervals what development was occurring. And so this allowed me to see the blue is 1980, the pink is 1990 and onwards. But as you can see, there was a big boom when it came to the green, which was like, I think 2000s. And that was after the brownfield remediation was completed. But then you could also see the density of the building starting to go higher, which was one of the things that the community started to fight against because zoning allowed for high rises in that area, but the context of the neighborhood was mostly low rise. And so that was something that was a challenge to balance out between market pressures and need for affordable housing versus the existing community and what they might want and feel comfortable with. All right, so this is another version of that same type of information broken into 10-year intervals, but this one is looking at the difference between the cost to purchase land within that time frame, and then the cost of the value of land after a structure was built on it. So if you study economics, this might make a lot more sense. It's very kind of common sense, but basically after brownfield remediation was done, the cost of land skyrocketed, which is what you can see with the bigger circles. And then
Yeah, do you want to mute? People will not mute.
So yeah, so I'm gonna make you the host. Okay, so yes, so after land value skyrocketed, the cost of living there obviously skyrocketed. So looking at that kind of juxtaposition allows you to think about what do you need to put in place in terms of infrastructure, in terms of investment, so that once the property value rises, people can adapt to that rise. So thinking about affordability is one thing, but thinking about how to generate revenue is another. And so because of that kind of analysis, I came up with this another framework to think about economics. So thinking about the funding sources that already exist, many of these were utilized by Riseborough and their partners, what the funding could be used for, the types of zoning and tax incentives attached to that funding, and then the types of entities that can apply, because some funding cannot be accessed by certain types of entities. So knowing what that is will allow you to partner more strategically. And so when it comes to the value chain, this is probably my favorite thing to think about now. This was my initial kind of understanding of it, just looking at land infrastructure regulations, design, construction, offtake, and maintenance, which is the development process, and thinking about what you need to consider, the cost of land, the access to funding, all of these different things. That was a very basic understanding of it. But with Regalia, I started to question, should I eat that pasta? I started to question where each stakeholder falls within the value chain and what is their power. And when I say power, I mean who's paying for what, who's making the regulations that this development needs to exist within, and who's advocating for who. And then thinking about ways that revenue could be made at each phase. So a lot of times when I talk about stakeholder communication and making sure that that's effective, throughout the value chain, there are opportunities to either hire local or source local or do something where money can be generating within that community. And so a lot of times those opportunities are not taken. So leveraging a platform that can show you where those voids are. And then, understanding what the expenses are. And one of the things that a lot of the interviewees mentioned was that depending on where you are in a stakeholder map, you might not understand the entire process or how long it takes to actually do certain phases of development. So making sure that very important information is shared among all stakeholders, but in a way that's effective. Because if people aren't coming to community meetings, maybe you need to think about doing something different. Just having a variety of ways to communicate. And then, of course, what is the return on investment? Because we don't want to continuously lose money because we are sustainable. We want to figure out how to grow our money. And so then I went ahead and I got this database put together where I essentially looked at, and for this framework, I used AIA's, I forget what it's called, but they have something design excellence, and it basically lists out economic strategies, water strategies, energy strategies, design strategies, wellness strategies, all of the things that will encompass an excellent design. And then I looked at specific strategies that could be basically replicated and standardized so that people can just know for this plot of land, you can do this, this, this. Like make it very, very simple. Okay, so this is me kind of looking at the back end of what it looks like to actually develop this platform. Initially, I used a lot of GIS in Grasshopper. So I've created some recurring scripts that I've tested out on multiple sites to make sure that they worked. So this one is just the ability to extrude GIS footprints into a massing, right? And then Map Pluto is a New York data source. I don't know if Map Pluto is in other places, but I just know it is amazing. It has everything you need. It has zoning, it has property, it has, it has everything. So basically taking that data and being able to filter out different things so you can understand how it might affect the feasibility or massing. But then, yes, this is just extruding. So for this platform, essentially the way that this entire platform would work is it would take the codes that I'm creating in the background, and the interface would be showcasing basically how to get funding and financing for your deal. So where to look. So if you put in an address, for instance, it'll say, for this plot of land, this is the historic data on it. You need to pay this amount to remediate whatever is wrong. And these are the sources of funding that you can use. And then it analyzes demographic data. So it says, based on the community development corporations in that area and their reports, and also other data available online, this is who you would be serving in that area. It assesses climate trajectories and trends. And it says, there are a lot of things happening because of climate change. So a lot of the infrastructure is going to have to change. So it gives insights into how you can prepare for that. And then it looks at policy, it gathers those community insights, and it spits out images. So right now I'm doing all of these things separately, and the images are being created using DALL-E or Midjourney. But I recently came across a developer who has been able to create a code that can plug into Google Maps, for instance, and create the exact same visualization of that, but then he's able to change it and tailor it based on, a code that he types in. So that's exciting. All right, I'm gonna stop there so I can, hello everybody. I'm gonna stop there and take some questions before we go to the next phase. I just went through a lot, so I wanna make sure that everybody is engaged and kind of in tune with what I'm doing. anything.
Any questions from anyone?
See what I got coming up.
I was some of the mapping that you're doing is really cool. The especially the well the both the maps that you showed with like the growth, but also the second one with the circles showing the increase in cost, I thought were really helpful. Also really helpful from like a policy standpoint because I feel like a lot of times people don't really look at like they inherently know things are increasing or whatever. But they like having the data and having the visualization, I feel like would be really helpful on the policy side as well.
Nice, thank you.
I really appreciate how you have incorporated climate change. I was wondering if that was going to be a part of what you were talking about. So that was really exciting to see.
Yeah, I actually realized I didn't share my whole presentation. But any more
So,
questions before I finish up the
like,
rest?
with the climate impact, do you plan to like incorporate what types of products would be useful?
Yes. So
Okay.
ideally, I've been reading a lot of case studies about what people have been doing, and it seems like a lot of people are having the same issues. So one thing that the platform is going to try to attempt to do is either partner with people who are already standardizing some of these methods that may seem expensive right now because they're underutilized, but could lead to more efficient systems moving forward that can sustain a test of time. So the vendor aspect of this, which I didn't really talk about the business model of Regalia, but essentially people will subscribe to this platform. And as a subscriber, whether you're a community development corporation or an architect or a material supplier, you'll go into this database and have access to information, but you'll also show up as a vendor for people who are doing work in your area. So I'm wanting to attract people who are using clean materials, clean methods, and making sure that we're creating sustainable systems together. And thinking about where to get the data from. That's another thing that is going to be very important. But I'm going to just pull up, I'm going to just show y'all real quick.
Can I ask one more question, Tiana?
Yes.
Just on the data bit, we know that New York City is a very data-rich city. Are you planning on focusing here, growing your product here, or are you trying to achieve breadth by like seeing other cities that also have data, or just like how are you planning on branching out to other cities, some that may be a little more data sparse?
Yes, that's an amazing question. So New York has so much data, but I'm from Wisconsin. And so my initial kind of understanding of data was from me doing maps using Milwaukee's database before I knew how to use GIS or anything. So the plan is to test Regalia out in New York and in Wisconsin first, because those are the two places that I'm the most familiar with, and they have completely different environments. Like Milwaukee has a lot of vacancies, a lot of vacant land, a lot of city-owned houses that are just underutilized. New York has very few vacancies, and when it is vacant, it costs a lot of money to acquire. So thinking about what that looks like in terms of finances, what that looks like in terms of data acquisition is going to challenge me in different ways. So I think that that's a great question. And then once I figure it out and create systems that are difficult to break, then I'll start to think about where the next location is going to be and how this could scale.
Got it. Thank you.
So, this is Catherine again. I have one more question.
Mhm.
When you mentioned about keeping the dollar in the community, I was working with a group in Baltimore that was trying to develop a property, and they wanted to use primarily black and brown vendors, and it was very difficult. Even now, we're trying to renew insurance and trying to like and find a black insurance company, and even if you can't find a black insurance company, finding a black broker. But basically, like every service that we were trying to hire for, whether it was contractors, we found some, but still not a lot, right? But like hiring the property manager or hiring a development manager, all of those things, like trying to find. So I didn't know if in what you're doing, you're trying to incorporate um bringing those contacts and having those having either links out to those resources to find those people, or what, if that's part of your project as well?
Yes, absolutely. That's a great question. And I would say yes, 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 yes. Because first of all, I'm from Wisconsin. Let me just reiterate that. Like, if you, yes. So I think that making sure that we're attracting people who are doing sustainable development is important, but also attracting people who we can highlight and kind of advertise and promote so they can get more business, is going to be important to especially Black and Brown folks. And I will say that I'm gonna share the rest because I did talk about this a little bit. I think so. I think I stopped here. Yes. So some of the key features of this platform is going to be, first of all, focusing on adaptive reuse, thinking about biophilic design, material technology, and economic development, visualizing the scenarios, thinking about the different scales, starting from community and going to global. But then I think stakeholder collaboration, this is kind of the vendor database that I was talking about. But the resource hub is going to be extremely important too, because one of the things that this platform wants to do is create opportunities to educate folks on either kind of debunking the fact that you can't do sustainable development and still get a return on investment, or showing people how to kind of execute sustainable practices into their developments, but highlighting the fact that we want to create pipelines in this space. And so how can we do that? So that's one of the things that's going to be very important. Oh, this goes back to my grasshopper thing, but essentially it works as you put in input. So for this example, this was a different project, but looking at a social vulnerability index, thinking about climate comfort levels according to standards and some sources. And then proximity to parks, because that has health benefits to it, thinking about building FAR, green spaces, all of those things were inputs for this. And I created basically, I wanted the Grasshopper scripts to give me 2 or 3 different variations. And then these were the descriptions. So essentially, this code was allowing me to test out different scenarios with these inputs. And so this is kind of what it looks like in the interface that I was building. But then this is what it spit out. Spit out hundreds of different development scenarios, just using massing, relationship to the sun, orientation, things like that. And then I was able to kind of quickly rank these scenarios based on the priorities that I put. So I think that this is a good starting point to understand how the tool is going to work on a very small scale. I think that's it. Oh, yes. I would love to talk more about it if you guys want to connect with me on LinkedIn or sign up to talk to me, meet with me. That would be great. I'm going to leave this up while I open it up for more questions. I did condense a lot of the presentation, so I do want to say that questions are helpful for me to understand what, first of all, you care the most about based on what I said and how I can kind of move this product forward into the future.
So for your membership model, who are you targeting? Are you targeting developers, designers?
Yeah, so initially I am going after developers, both private and community-based organizations who develop affordable housing, just because they're the ones that are going to give me the financial information that I need to make sure that these methods that I'm promoting make sense. But I am also looking to architects. My background is in architecture. So I think that the design practices and workflows are going to be important so I can understand what the interface needs to look like and what data needs to be embedded in it.
I just had a question. This is Donna. You
Hello.
spoke about community land trust, which is something I'm extremely interested in, and how I thank you for the presentation. It was wonderful. How this can be utilized in getting all of the stakeholders together to create that space or the community land trust, which is something that I'm really interested in. And,
Mhm.
you know, so I
Yeah.
just, yeah, go ahead.
So I would love to talk to you more about community land trusts. The project that I showed a picture of that was based in Culebra, Puerto Rico, that was a time where I was able to go really in depth with what it takes to develop a community land trust, especially in a place that a lot of the data that I utilize, I had to create. And so it was really thinking about, we were working with a community development corporation in Culebra called Mujeres de las Islas. And they had some partners throughout Puerto Rico, but also throughout the US and in other places. So what I did for them, well, I had that. I created a bunch of data sets for them, but essentially one of them listed out all of the stakeholders that they already have, and based on their values and work that they were able to execute, all of the stakeholders that they could have, and all of the access to funding opportunities that those other stakeholders had, so that we can start to bridge the conversation. And it got to a point where I was actually talking to them about what it would actually look like to implement the community land trust there. Essentially, I was able to kind of look at what they were doing and enhance it in a way that they could access more funding, but also think about how the community land trust can inform policy there and the regulations that existed around development. And so, to your point, I think that the stakeholder mapping is extremely crucial, and I have a lot of strategies that um, I, that I've either come up with or utilized from other folks. And yeah, I would love to discuss
Yeah,
more.
thank you. That makes sense. I appreciate that.
Mhm.
Hello, this is Amber
Hey.
speaking. You talked about how Regalia is able to bring in the different informations about like just geographical context and demographical data. Can you go into how Regalia will take a look at the policies that sort of affect the way our materials are manufactured from different spaces around the world?
Mm-hmm. I wish I would have put this other. So I do a lot of work in material supply chains. So understanding basically if you get and this is a whole nother conversation about, AI and how it utilizes energy and where you get the energy to fuel AI. That's a whole nother
Mm-hmm.
conversation. But what was your question again? I'm sorry, I just got.
It happens. It was about how Regalia will get into the policies that sort of affect how materials are brought into the United States to supplement what you're doing with the materials that you already have here.
So how Regalia is incorporating policy. So right now, I'm looking at policy as it relates to funding opportunities, but I'm also looking at policies attached to specific green infrastructure projects or specific like sustainable projects. But I am also thinking about Regalia, so developers, both private and nonprofit, but the governmental entities, I'm not looking at them as much as a vendor, but more as a partner to help roll out this information and
Okay.
access data. So I think
Mm-hmm.
that part of it will be kind of being close to people who are making the policies to understand and inform kind of what they're doing based on what I'm seeing from the data being acquired and utilized.
Thank you so much for your answer.
Mm-hmm. But that's a good question. I gotta think about that a little bit more.
If no one else
Anything
is Oh, I was gonna say if no one else is ready for the second question, I have another question about just partnering with developers on this adventure. Can you get into how that experience was for you just being in New York and if there were any challenges or opportunities that you had with specific developers that sort of bought into this dream and this idea?
Yeah, so right now, okay, I see you, Donna. Um, so I just started to really talk about Regalia this year. I've been developing it for a little bit, but since I did my first demo, I have had some interest in both product developers and developers who do housing. And so one of the more recent conversations that just came to mind from your question was a person who is working with Esri. And the question is, can we develop a system that will, using LiDAR, to essentially map out all of New York to create a digital twin of the city so that it can inform how to create more regulations around air rights. But not only that, how can we utilize that information to understand how to basically be the go-to person for surveys? So understanding not only what is in the built environment, but what's underground. Can we leverage technology for that? So I think that a lot of the conversations that I'm having with developers are really how can you maximize the technology to do things? But that's just one that came to mind. The other ones are really coming to me about site, like the first part of the goal, which is where to develop. So they really want to know what's the best parcels, or where can you do the most amount, where can you get the most bang for your buck, and what does that look like?
I have a question. So I was wondering if you looked at other platforms that examine like a similar aspect of like design and development, and like it sounds like, well, at least for my experience with TestFit or even like Forma, it seems very similar, but it seems like your platform seems like a little bit more straightforward and educational. So I guess I just wanted to know like what you saw in maybe other platforms that you want to incorporate in yours.
Yeah, I will say there's a bunch of platforms. So what I've been doing is, if you have a platform similar to mine, which is a business to business tech venture that does development, I'm looking at if you have a demo. And if you do, I'm signing up because I want to see kind of how you're navigating this space. And so one of the companies that I really like, this might be less for the design aspect, but I think that they had a really robust system. So they were looking at the economic portion of this, and they were able to say, based on trends of um, income brackets, if you fit into certain income brackets, you're probably going to spend a certain way. And so if we do a development in a neighborhood that consists of majority of people who are within this income bracket, these are what you should invest in. And so they were able to see, like, if you wanted to do X development of mixed use income, mixed use residential, this would be the economic impact, and this is how it would impact the supply chains. So I thought that that was a really interesting system, and they walked me through it, and they have so much data, so you can get data at a regional scale or the entire US. And so, but it costs a lot of money. And they were just kind of walking me through how they thought about it and how they kind of tailored their business to meet the needs of their clients. So those are like the types of conversations I'm having with other companies that are doing this. It was another company that got acquired, so I don't know who acquired them, but the original name is Neighborland, and they did more of the kind of on the ground, this is what the neighbors want, these are the businesses that they frequent, and this is how we can highlight them. And so that's another type of work that I want this platform to do. So I was paying attention to kind of their strategies and how they were successful, and they leveraged social media, but like the automatic stuff, like the SEOs, like they were really focused on digital marketing. But I haven't seen anybody take data and transform it into visualizations, though. It's usually data sets.
Hey, Tiona. This is
Hello.
Eva speaking. Thanks for the presentation. And I have a question for you. So, at this stage of your growth, are you focused more on expanding your like data team, or like GIS, or like just kind of wondering what track are you focusing on right now?
So right now, Q1, I'm really just trying to get it out there, trying to like these events for different stakeholders to get some insights to see what people are gravitating towards. it's helping me prioritize how I'm going to roll out the products and what phase I need to focus on the most. But I'm also at the end of quarter one, so I've started to apply to accelerator programs. I'm starting to talk to investors. I'm starting to look at grants, and just basically I need to get some funding to actually build this out. And so once the platform is actually built out enough so that I can test the MVP, then I'm going to see how people engage with it and what tweaks need to be made. And so by third quarter, I'm going to be looking at who I want on my team. So I already have a list of people that I might need, but I think that fractional CFOs and stuff like that are going to be important, but also somebody who can take over the tech side and manage that, because I want to be able to focus more on the holistic vision of the platform and not the data side. But I think that that's a crucial part of it.
Thanks.
Mhm. Anything else? Okay.
I did want to say something to you, Tiana. I enjoyed your presentation. It was lovely. It was beautiful. It was definitely inspirational. I love what you've been doing and how you've been doing it. As you continue to move forward with developing Regalia, I would say this is something that I've been looking into myself.
Mhm.
As your platform develops, I think it'd be great and wonderful to have it as a plug-in
Mhm.
to other design software. Because as we work on different projects, it will be lovely to take your data and information and plug it into whatever project we're currently working on to see if we can figure out, different investment options or any other stakeholders out there that will be willing to invest in those design projects that we develop. So I would definitely say look into maybe making it a plugin or how that will work. But this presentation is an eye opener and I love it. I'm excited for it. I want to see it in the future. I want
Nice.
it to go big.
Me too. Me too. So I'm gonna show you guys one more thing so this is a different presentation that I got so many decks, but I just wanted to show kind of my business model really quick. So part of it is the resource hub where you get the data, so stakeholders will get the access to this, but then licensing is going to be a big part of it. The methodologies and frameworks that I'm creating, the data models, are going to be sold and licensed, but also creating the APIs for people to use or for me to use in my system. Like I mentioned Implan because I didn't know if they were a competitor or a partner. So I think that thinking about those things are where I'm at, but then also consulting. So Mecca is my company that I currently own. Regalia is a subsidiary that I'm launching. And so what I do, the methods that I'm creating in my own work is going to inform Regalia. So making sure that if people want it to, we can work one-on-one. And then this is my roadmap. Because you asked kind of where I was heading. So this year, just making sure legally I'm safe and sound before I start giving away all my codes and stuff like that in these sessions. But then getting some money, building out my team, and then securing some customers to test out the product more in depth. What else I got in here? Yes, this is my 3-year plan. Stuff. Yeah, so I think that'll be yes.
Tiana, would you mind sharing your QR code for your website again?
Yes, absolutely.
Thank you.
The QR code for the website is here. Anything else? And I do have a newsletter. I just made it the other day and I don't know how to get the subscribe link yet, but I will. And then I'll follow up with the participants in this call and I'll share the recording. I do also have a LinkedIn business page finally. So I'm going to start to post some of the work that I'm doing there. So if you follow me on LinkedIn, you can keep up with the progress. And then, yes, I'm trying to build a community of people who I can continuously have feedback loops with and discuss and maybe partner and collaborate in different ways. So, yes. You also might get a post-event survey.
That's awesome. Any other questions or comments from anyone? Tiana,
Wait,
sorry, go ahead.
just like a
Yeah.
really quick thing. I just wanted to say felicidades, and this is incredible. And I really appreciate how you took all of these like really very big concepts or big practice items and you made it very digestible. Like I'm not a housing person, so I feel like I really learned something in this last hour. So thank you so much for that. And I wish you so much luck moving forward.
you.
So yeah, no, I just wanted to give love to you.
Yeah, and I think the one question I had was that you'd mentioned that you are going to use this model in Wisconsin. Had you talked to stakeholders here, or what was your strategy for
To get
that?
into Wisconsin? So, good question. I haven't engaged with stakeholders in Wisconsin in a while, aside from Regit, who's connected to the communities through the community, the Building Landscape Sculptures Field School. And I've done a lot of work with that school for the past 3 years. That's where my original research sprouted from. So I have to check because it's been a minute, but I do have connections at the city of Milwaukee and the city of Racine because I used to work there. But I do see that Milwaukee's policy around housing has changed because my initial goal was to acquire one of the vacant duplexes and test out an adaptive reuse kind of strategy that I've been coming up with. So I have to look at what that looks like now with the changing things. But I am in contact with a real estate developer in Wisconsin right now who's doing a lot of work in the Sherman Park neighborhood.
Oh, yeah. I think Julie Kaufman has done a lot of redevelopment work, adaptive reuse and redevelopment work here in Wisconsin. And there's plenty of contacts here that, we'd be happy to connect you with. So exciting to see you, give back to your home state and use us as, as a testing ground, if I may say that. So,
Yeah, I might be back there real soon, honestly.
oh, that's great.
Not for anyway. Ooh,
So
thank you,
there
Ever.
is yeah.
Yeah, I just want to say thank you for the presentation, Tiana. You've put so much work into the platform, and it's just really exciting to see. And I can't wait to see where it goes by the end of the year and so on.
Thank you. Me too. I can't wait.
For sure.
Thank you,
All right.
Tiana. It was great. Amazing.
Thank you. Thank you, guys. Have a good night.
Yeah, thank you
for
so
coming.
much.
Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah,
Have a
thank
good
you.
night.
Thank you.
Great
Thank you for
presentation.
attending.
Okay.